Hey guys, BJ the Brave here, back with this week's Meta Snapshot. Last week, the Heirs of the Omen third expansion was very, very new, right? So things were a little bit in flux. This week, things are starting to evolve. We've got some spicy new decks that have entered the meta, and we're starting to see, we've had Shadowverse, Open qualifiers, we've had Pro League, and the ladder is starting to settle. So I'm much more confident in this week's Snapshot. Do bear in mind, guys, I try to do as much research as possible. I want this to be as valid as it can be, but, it's not an exact science. There's a little bit of opinion and subjectivity thrown in, so, don't be angry. Life's too short. With that said, guys, I'm excited to get into it. You want to watch this one all the way through. Many of the decks themselves have changed, and the card makeup has definitely evolved. So look out for that. I'll be sharing the codes as well, and there should be a link to all of these decks in the description below. With that said, guys, let's jump in to week 2 of the Heirs of Omen Meta Snapshot. Okay, so first of all, tier 4 then. So as of the 13th of September, I think the tier 4 decks are the kinds of decks that you can definitely pull off wins with. They're a lot of fun. Some people might call them meme decks. I don't know. They are a little bit memey, I guess. They're not going to be consistent, right? You're going to struggle to kind of climb, but you can definitely win games with them. And so what I've tried to do is gather you a range of those decks that I think we are seeing right now. Fluctuation Rune is a brand new archetype and is definitely a fun one. I don't know that there are enough cards to fully flesh out this archetype, but it has started to emerge, and again, it's quite a fun deck. It's not necessarily uber powerful, but you can definitely pick wins up with it. Miracle Jerry is all about going off with Jerry and Cocytus in the same turn and basically ending the game either that turn or the turn after, like pretty instantly. This was covered last week and stays in tier 4. Similarly, we've got Cocytus Rush. I did a deck guide on this one, so go and check that out. But this is about being the first deck in the game that is able to play Cocytus. So in other words, it can play Cocytus faster than any other deck. So you can kind of like almost out-rune Rune by getting to Cocytus early and winning the game via that. Stormhaven is still down in tier 4. I don't feel like this has really emerged yet, or we haven't seen any evidence of this like really shooting up and being super consistent. But again, when things line up for this deck, can be super powerful. Now, Fenny Ramp. Now, when it comes to Dragon, guys, in this Meta Snapshot, stay tuned because there's quite a few different variants of Dragon. Fenny Ramp is, as you would expect, it is a ramp deck. So it's making use of all the full ramp card set and trying to then benefit from Fenny's ability. So the rest of the cards are very much based around that and getting discounts. And again, it can be incredibly powerful in the late game, but it's very, very inconsistent. And that's the main reason why it's in tier 4. Earth Rune is not a deck that we're really seeing much anymore, to be honest, but it has been around really since set 1 and certainly got cemented in set 2. It's a nice tempo way of playing Rune. Can certainly catch people out on ladder when they're expecting spell boost. But again, I don't think it deserves anything higher than turn 4 currently. So let's jump in and look at the decks. There's the QR code, of course, if you want to actually copy this and run with it. So this is Fluctuation Rune, guys. Fluctuation because what you're doing is the cost of your cards are fluctuating, right? There are cards that make your cards more expensive, like Illusory Conjuration, but then it gives you hard removal. And then there are other cards, things like the Institute of Truth allows you to cheapen your cards and things like that. And then you get payoffs and benefits. And of course, the big finisher, Ryo, is making all of the followers in your deck cost 3 less, giving you an incredibly kind of tempo-heavy end game. So that's Fluctuation Room. It's a lot of fun if you want to give that one a try. And you've got the cards. You've probably been opening many packs now under the Heirs of Omen. You may well be able to put that one together. Next up, we got Miracle Jerry. I really like this deck. It's super fun, super memey. It goes all in on the draw. We've got Seraphic Tidings, Adventurer's Guild, Greatness Ascended, Golden Note Melody. It's just draw, 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 draw. You've got the Draconic Strike, which can make Cocytus cheaper, and or it could make Jerry cheaper. And then what you're looking to do is play Jerry and then Cocytus basically in the same turn, so that you only end up having 10 cards in deck. And of course, Jerry's crest is going to mean that you draw 6 and then discard at the end of the turn. So basically, you play one draw card and you've kind of won the game automatically. Really fun deck. Cocytus Rush, this is just all about mulliganing hard for ramp and keeping Cocytus. Getting 2 Cocytus, you can usually play it when your opponent's on like play point 7 or play point 8, and you play your Cocytus, and then you kind of get a couple of turns to just win through that. Stormhaven has had a few new additions, like things like the Winged Lion statue and the Shining Disenchantment, which is pretty cool. So you can play things like Skullfane of Demise and just instantly kill those, and that means that the things that are in them come out, like the 4 damage or the followers that are hiding in there. Yeah, it's definitely getting there. This deck, it's definitely getting there, but it's just still not quite as consistent as the top decks. And then Fenny Ramp, as I said earlier, guys, this is really focusing quite heavily on Fenny herself. The idea is that we've got cards like the Genesis Dragon. We don't want to be paying 10 for that here. We want to be paying 5 for it. You know, and things like Olivia, obviously very, very good, because even if Olivia costs 7 and didn't get the discount, chances are she's drawing 2 cards that are heavily discounted after you've played Fenny. Great idea. It's just very, very inconsistent. Okay, and this is kind of what an Earthright version would look like if you want to play Rune a little bit differently. Maybe you have got more of the old cards and you haven't got loads from the new set. However, you got things like the Dogged one fit in here from the neutral set to give this a little bit more reach. But yeah, very good tempo with Lilanthem as the kind of main end game there, and obviously this thing just sticks to the board and it just can't really be removed very easily at all. So yeah, if you want to play Rune a little bit differently, this is a nice one for you to try. All right, so let's get into tier 3 now, guys. Rose Queen combo has actually risen from tier 4 to tier 3. I'm going to be sharing you a deck from Freddy Babes, who has come up with a new version of it that has integrated some of the new cards. And to be honest with you, it's actually in quite a similar position as Azudia Control. There are some fundamental differences. I'll get onto that when we show you the decks. But it's actually not tier 4. It's not a meme. It's actually pretty good. I know he's going to be taking it in the SVO Qualifier 3 this weekend, so let's see how he gets on with it. But yeah, Rose Queen combo, nice to see that being refreshed. Puppet Portal's an old deck. Again, I don't want to rule it out because I appreciate there are a lot of free-to-play players. There are people who haven't got lots of the new cards yet, and I think I always say this is kind of the go-to. Like the Puppet Portal, it's got a 50-50 chance against most things. It's a decent deck. It is falling a little bit behind, I guess, in power level, but it's still up there. And if you haven't got lots of new cards, it's probably not a bad one to play. Now, Ward Haven is... there's quite a few Haven decks about. Obviously, it's not the best Haven deck at the minute, but it's still got that ultimately awesome matchup into Combo Roach. So, and it has benefited from a few of the new cards. So, still not played as much, but it's still in a decent place. Artifact Hybrid, gosh, remember when this was like tier 1, guys, a few seasons ago? It just, I don't know, it's just fallen off a little bit. One of the main reasons is that there's a lot more heal in the game now, so people can counter the Artifacts B, which does the damage, and also the Masterwork as well. Before, it would just get you down to 10 or 13, and then they'd finish you off with the Masterwork. But now people can kind of play around that a lot easier. Azudia Control is has a very interesting place in the meta right now. Barrick brought this to SV Qualifier 2 and won with this and Mode Abyss. So yeah, Azudia Control definitely proving that it has some very strong matchups in the current meta. Aggro Abyss, again, fallen off a little bit due to the amount of heal, but it's still one of those decks that is going to catch your opponent out, especially on ladder. I think it's a good ladder deck because people, you know, they queue into Abyss, they don't know which version they're going to get, and unfortunately, the aggro version is not. It's not easy to adapt to it if you weren't expecting the aggro. So yeah, overall, I do think that. Aggro Abyss is no longer in tier 2. And then we have the Disdain Ramp, and this is really leading quite heavily into the new Disdain ability and making use of the ramp cards as opposed to going through the Fenny route. So I think this version is better than Fenny. It's more consistent, it's easier to pilot, and I think it's quite high in tier 3. Okay, so let's take a look at those decks then. So the first thing is the Rose Queen combo. This is Freddy Babes' deck. Definitely give him a check out on YouTube. Freddy has come from Gwent. He was an excellent tournament player in Gwent, and I expect him to to do very well in SV tournaments as well as we unfold. I know he's made it to the play-ins a few times and stuff, so he's getting there. Yeah, this deck is really cool. So how has it changed? Well, I think the main thing is it's very, very easy to line up your hand now with lots and lots of ones. And if you think about it, it's one turn kill. If you get 7 brambles, right, you can do 21 damage from hand. You don't care about ward units. So, and you can actually do that by sort of turn 10 or turn 9 if you're going second, because you can use the coin to get Rose Queen out on 8, and then you can go off on 9. And that's actually faster than Azudia, right? So it's an OTK that comes down very early. I think that some of the new cards, like the Hamlet, has made a huge difference to this in terms of being able to draw through the deck. We can also bring in things like Eradicating Arrow, which are fantastic because it helps us to stay in the game, but it's only a 1-cost card, right? So it's perfect for Bramble. And the other big addition is, surprise, surprise, 3 copies of Gilnelise, meaning that, you know, we just need to survive, right? And there's not many better cards in the game that can allow you to heal really well at pretty much most points of the game than Gilnelise. So we're not really using Gilnelise for the win con, the turn 10 thing here. We're really using it to just survive and heal. But actually those cards that I've just talked about make a massive, massive difference in your ability to pull this off. So I actually think this deck I think this is a significant refinement, a significant change, and the win rate has gone up significantly because of those changes that we just mentioned. So definitely give that one a test and a run on ladder. Next up, we got the Puppet. As I said, not a lot has changed. I still see Absolute Zero's version of this, which I think is excellent. You know, it's a super powerful, I want to call it a vanilla deck. It feels a little bit like that, but obviously Noah's just giving you endless amounts of puppets, and you've got hard removal built in through like medical grade assassins. You've obviously got Orcus as the big finisher, and the new Zwei card, of course, from last season, making it in there as well. So yeah, if you've not got tons from set 3, this is not a bad deck to run with. Next up, we've got Wardhaven. As I mentioned, we've got things like the Knights of the Holy Order that have been added, which actually work quite nicely in here. And in addition to that, we've got the Supplicant of Repose. So we've kind of got a little bit of chip heal built in, which is something that Ward did struggle with a little bit. So yeah, I actually think this is a slight refinement from set 2 and is a pretty solid tier 3 deck. Next up is the Artifact Portal. Like I said, this deck's been around a while, but I have refined it slightly and updated it with the for this set. And I think this is probably as good as you're going to be able to get right now with Artifact. And then Azudia Control. I've stuck with Barrick's deck, who won the Shadowverse Open Qualifier 2 with this. And essentially, you know, like if you think about it, it's got quite a good chance against things like Abyss Aggro and Sword, because it's got things like Cruel and Supplicant, and then it's got all the heal, right, in the form of Gilnelise and then the Deepwood Fairy Beast. So in those types of matches, you don't really need the Azudia win con. You just basically heal and you bounce things like Deepwood Fairy or Congruent, fill the board, bounce the weakest one. And you just run them out of resources, and then you end up winning on board. So it's very good. Now, obviously, in the slow matches like Rune and Haven, what you want to be trying to do there is get the OTK off, playing Azudia, and then either bouncing it or getting a second version. You can use Baby Carbuncle to go off 1 turn earlier to get the big finish and basically do 20 damage. So it's really good into Cresthaven. It's got a good shot against Rune. If Rune does go off on 10 with like super duper ooper womba combo, it will probably beat you still, but if not, then you probably beat them. And like I say, it's got a decent chance into sort of Sword and Abyss as well. So it's not badly positioned in the meta. I do find it to be a little bit linear. I got a little bit bored playing it on ladder. I'm quite a variety gamer. I don't stick with the deck for too long, but it's definitely got an interesting spot in the meta. Next up, Aggro Abyss. This is the deck. You'll notice not too much has changed since last week. The main thing is we put the Devotee of Entwining in there, and that's about it really. It's just doing the same old, trying to get the beat down. You could run the Roulette 7 drop to try and have more later game Storm, but I think this is pretty refined at this point, to be honest. And then this is the Disdain Dragon. So you'll notice, like, when we're comparing it with the Fenny Dragon, we don't run the Olivias because we haven't got any Fennies. We haven't got these discounted cards. This is really just about curving out really nicely and then making use of those Disdains. You get Galmeo down, and then you start getting loads of the 0-cost deal 1 damage spells racked up in hand, and then you can bring the Heir of Disdain, Heir to Disdain down. And basically, once you do drop Azufit, then you just play all your 0 costs, and then it does 1 damage to enemy face, and you do a big wombo combo. And of course, you've got heal bait in there with Neptune and a gazillion Mega Lorcas in this deck, and you've also got a little bit of board control in the Ferocious Flames, the Phylines, and you've got a bit of heal from the Supplicant of Disdain. And you've got a little bit of beatdown as well, a little bit of range in Forte as well. So it's kind of quite a nice, flexible game plan, this one. It's a bit like a late mid-range build, I would call this. But you are able to kind of do a nice mixture of control and beatdown. Pretty cool. All right, so let's look at Tier 2 then this week. So I think Mid-Abyss is still a cut above the decks that we've just mentioned overall, especially on ladder. Again, people don't know what you're going to be playing. Mid-Abyss is quite nice, and it can change gears pretty well. It can play the control match, it can play an aggro match, and it doesn't have to worry about kind of meeting the quest mode of Mode Abyss, right? Like, it can just play good cards to do what it's trying to do at each point. Egg Portal is a complete new archetype, and this has been refined a little bit this week, and I think this deck, there's a few players who are doing really well with it. I still think it's kind of a little bit... I think that if you get a bad matchup with it, then you're going to struggle. I also think this archetype probably is going to get better when it gets a few new cards, but it is actually quite powerful. Having that kind of constant heal and chip damage, and also having cards that cannot be destroyed by abilities can really cause a problem for a lot of the kind of removal cards that people play at the minute. Next up, we have Mid-Range Sword. It's like the deck that everybody forgot about. I wanted to put it in Tier 3, but I just can't. It's still very, very powerful. I don't think it's Tier 1 anymore. It hasn't quite got the beatdown reach, but in terms of sort of like grinding your opponent out, it's still very, very powerful. And in terms of that kind of like putting value down every turn, it's still pretty hard to beat Mid-Range Sword. Now, Storm, Jerry, and Tempo Fairy are 2 of the huge changes and somewhat new decks. Tempo Fairy is not new, but we have had a new build around that coming from the Pro League, which sees Jerry added into the Tempo Fairy framework. And Storm Jerry is a new archetype, also including Jerry, and is very, very powerful. It's actually the deck that I got Grandmaster with this season. Interestingly enough, and I'll be doing deck guides on that, so look out for that on my channel. And then I think at top of Tier 2, I've got Mode Abyss. I feel like Mode Abyss in a good player's hands is like the ultimate Swiss Army knife at the minute. It's got a chance against everything. And if you understand the matchup and you can play it really well, it's got a chance against everything. I watched... in the Pro League this week, an insane game between Mode Abyss and Spell Boost. And Spell Boost got Kakaitis down, right? And it looked like it was all over. And the guy played the Mode Abyss so well that he ended up dragging it out for another 6 or 7 turns and ended up winning. And it was just, I've just never seen that happen before. It was phenomenal. So this deck is very powerful. It's got a lot of flexibility. So it's obviously very easy to make the wrong play. But again, in the hands of a good player, and if you do know the matchups, then I do think that Mode Abyss is a strong deck. The only thing is that it's a tiny bit slow sometimes in getting the mode aspect off. You do win many matches by ignoring mode pretty much, and just as in, you know, ignoring the getting the bonus from mode and just playing quickly with the deck. That is one of the lines of play as well. So pretty strong Tier 2, I think, at the minute. I think all those decks are really powerful, and as I say, you can definitely climb to the top, you know, to Grandmaster or whatever with any of those decks in tier 2. I'm pretty confident to say that. So let's look at the actual decks then, starting with mid Abyss. So this is mid-range Abyss, and as you can see, there's no mode here. It's just got powerful cards. Right from the start, you can kind of outvalue on board with Beryl, and you've got sticky units like from the Ghastly Soiree or the Undead Soldier. You've got obviously your great tempo in terms of Ruella and the Devotee for your AoE and your Supplicant of the Entwining, and Gravy, 3 copies of good old Gravy. And then into the end game, you've got Rulnai and Odin, which can obviously give you a lot of beatdown, and Cerberus as well. So, you know, overall, I think this deck is a very offensive mid-range deck, but it can obviously play slightly slower and grindier with some of the sticky units as well, if needed. You could run a copy of Olivia maybe in here, because you have got some pretty sticky units that might end up benefiting, for example, from Olivia, and also there's things like the Shadow Crypt Memorial. Put that down, and then you obviously trigger the Ghost, and you can get buffs as well. So Olivia would work pretty well in here as well, but it might just be a tiny bit slower. If you are running out of cards, maybe try that. Oh, and of course, 3 copies of Rage Serpents gives you a lot more reach as well. So yeah, I think this deck is pretty good. I know one of my guild members is climbing nicely on ladder with this right now. Okay, next up we got the Egg Portal. Now, personally, this, of all the new archetypes, I have not played this much at all this season because I don't actually own all of these cards yet, but I've certainly played against it quite a lot. Yeah, it's a very, very grindy deck, right? Being able to get that devastating Soprano down early and to start to get you know, the passive kind of chip heal and chip damage down. Yeah, it's actually quite fast in the early game, and then it actually sort of slows down a little bit, but then it does very, very well at grinding out. The only thing is that when you go into the grinding game, sometimes our opponents can either outgrind you, or they can kind of get in first with things like storm damage and just win before you get to pull off your win con. But it's a really interesting new way of playing Portal for sure. Mid-sword, good old mid-sword. Guys, not much to see here. You know the drill. This deck's been around for a couple of seasons now. This particular version does run the new Congregants, because I think that's a very, very solid 4-drop, particularly on turn 1 when you don't want a Zirconia. Sorry, particularly when you've got turn 1 and you can't play Zirconia on 4 with Evolution. You do have a bit of a gap there, and Congruent fills that quite nicely. And yeah, other than that, you've got the kind of stickiness of the Royal Coachwoman and the early quick bladers as well. So it's really just a tempo, a very traditional kind of card game deck, this, right? Just a tempo deck. And of course, you've got Gildaria that's just going to benefit from giving you essentially 5 super evolutions, when most other decks are only getting 3. And if you've got the Grimnir down, that's getting triggered potentially 5 times, which is pretty phenomenal. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the Storm Jerry. Now, this deck is phenomenal. This deck got me to Grandmaster this season. It is actually the deck that is being run by the #1 player on the Dragoncraft class on ladder. So if you look at the #1, the top of the rankings, this was their deck. So I thought I'd give it a try, and yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Really love it. Basically, what I realized with this deck is that it's pretty much like a Storm deck. It makes a lot of good use of Intimidate, which I think is a keyword that many people have forgotten about. You know, we've got things like the Ifa Windrider in here, of course, Forte, and sometimes they can just win you the game because people don't have removal for them. Even things like other Dragon decks, they're cutting a lot of the spells, right? So that they just can't do anything to Forte. But what is really great with this deck is that you can just tempo out. You've got things like the Indomitable Fighter and Jerry, which give you a really strong 4-drop if you're playing like on curve and you miss your Dragon Signs. No, we're not playing the full ramp set. We're just playing the Dragon Signs. We're not playing the 4-drop card. Instead, we're playing proactive 4-drops. As I say, often you play Jerry just as a 4-drop, right? You're not actually evolving it. You're not trying to go into the Jerry Wincon. Generally speaking, against Abyss, the Jerry Wincon is often one that you'll need to go down, and sometimes against Sword. But against things like Rune, for example, you actually just want to be storming down. Most of the time, you won't go into the Jerry Wincon. You'll actually just play it like a super fast storm, super powerful storm deck. The Rage of Lightning's really good in giving you removal and essentially like doing face damage. That card is a bit of a surprise, actually, a bit of a dark horse. And also Garyu is phenomenal. I found Garyu to be really, really great as a top end in this, because quite often you can just like the pressure that Garyu puts on, like the amount of resource your opponent needs to use to get rid of it, means that you kind of just both clear out your super evos. Garyu gets to put a bit of face damage on as well, and then you've just got all these flankers that just come on and use anything that you've got left. And then things like Indomitable Fighter don't even need evo, right? So yeah, I mean, I think this deck's phenomenal. You've even got things like a single copy of the fan as well, so to ensure you've got inevitable storm damage and stuff. It's kind of got it all. The biggest thing here is learning the Jerry play. Like when it goes into a Jerry game, is really understanding all the cards and looking for what do you need, what sort of route do you want to go down. And I might need to do a separate video on that because it's quite a complex one. So yeah, very, very cool. Look out for the guide that is on my channel for this, coming probably be my next video after this one. And yeah, definitely go and give this a shot on ladder. It's very, very powerful. And very similar in concept is the Tempo Fairy. So both of these decks, guys, what they're trying to do is they're trying to play for tempo, right? So they're playing very early tempo, very fast, and then obviously the problem with that is you run out of value, and that's what Jerry covers, right? Jerry then gives you infinite value because you just get six cards every turn, and it's also got inevitability because if your opponent's able to just keep up with you, then you just draw your whole deck and win, right? So it's kind of got a wink on at all stages of the game. You very, very rarely, with Storm Jerry, I found that you very rarely get to that third wink on, which is just running out of cards. But with Tempo Fairy, it's a bit different. So Tempo Fairy, you tend to not have as good end game storm as the dragon version, but you've got better early game chip damage, right? So this can put on a board really quickly with things like Faye Twinkletoes, Cynthia, and also what you're looking for is to not be greedy with Roach. Okay, probably around turn 6. Turn 6, you probably want to be going off with your Roach. Turn 6, 7, something like that, and just kind of, you know, maybe it does an extra 5 or 6 damage to face, so you're chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. And then you've got the Odins to come down and finish. Also Arya, making sure that your fairies can actually go face. So you can often, again, just win without the Jerry wink on. But often what happens is you run out of cards with this. You've got them down to like 8 or 9 damage. And then you play Jerry. You obviously have to save an Evo point. And then Jerry gives you the value for the late game to finish the game off. Amataz is actually great in this deck because you want to be looking early for fairies like the Fairy Tamer, Convocation, things like that. And then Amataz can sometimes on turn 3 be like a 6/6. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that can get you off to the races. And obviously a copy of Tatiana as well, giving you a fairy every single turn. Even if you Jerry, you'll still get that fairy every turn. So that's pretty cool as well. Yeah, this deck came out of the Pro League. Got revealed towards the end of this week, and people have already started to iterate on it. I think the Pro League version didn't have Odin, but I actually think this is definitely better with Odin because it gives you that option to kind of be able to win games where you don't necessarily need to play Jerry. So yeah, this is another really, really powerful deck. I think it's very much up there in tier 2. And by the way, Tempo Fairy and Storm Jerry, they both got pretty good matchups into Rune as well. So another reason why I think they're quite high in tier 2. Okay, next up we've got Mode Abyss. This is the deck that is taken from Mingy God, who was actually, again, top of the Runecraft rankings on ladder. This is his version of the deck. I think it's really, really cool. It's got some nice things in there with like Leah early, being a target for your Reaper's Death Lashes, right? To be able to instant kill a unit and draw. And then also a nice target for your Chaos Cyclones, which basically can reanimate a 2-drop, bringing back Leah, which gives you more draw, and hence the cycle continues. So what you've got here is an absolute value engine of the deck. And then, of course, once you have got mode 10 times, then Shamnacha comes down, and that's when things get real scary, because that's when you play things like your Congregant or the Entwining, and suddenly you can choose 4 4 different mode options, which is just phenomenal. You just create monster boards and finish. Yeah, this is a very, very good deck, guys. It's got a ton of value in there. It has got a little bit of reach in there, and we've got a single copy of Medusa in there to keep up with Rune, give you a chance in that matchup when they go off with the Guardians from Norman. So that is Modabis. I do think this deck is high rank 1. It is a bit tough against Rune, but you can win that matchup. Even though I think you're slightly unfavored, you can win it. And it's got a good, it's got a decent match against Sword, because you can kind of heal nicely whenever they kind of go aggro. We talked a lot about this in my interview with Barrett. Go check that out on the channel. And Tagul, who's a real expert with the Modabis archetype, so definitely go and check that out. And I just released a video as well with a bit of a guide for this from my games this week, so if I remember I'll put the link above, but go and check that out on the channel. So let's move on to tier 1. So in tier 1 we have got Cresthaven, Combo Roach, Loot Sword and Spell Boost, but we have got some updated deck lists for you, so let's go and check that out. Don't forget, guys, to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments, by the way, if there are any decks that you feel I've missed, or if there are any of these that you kind of slightly disagree with, or you would have put in a different order. Always good to get some constructive chat going alongside these videos. All right, so Cresthaven, here we go. Just taking this one from the Pro League. There's been a few versions. I still think that it's been refined a little bit. There are about 4 or 5 cards that you can kind of play around with. Actually, maybe that's a bit many. Maybe 3 or 4, I should have said, that you can play around with depending on what the meta is and what you're facing. So, if you're coming up against a lot of Sword, then Selefa is a good one to add in there. If you're needing to compete more in the late game, you can put Cocytus in for maybe a single copy of Jean. So yeah, there are a few different tech choices for sure. Some people are running Lightning instead of the Dose. But this version came from the Pro League. I think it's pretty good. It's pretty refined. And again, yeah, just basically getting those crests down and then automatically dealing 5 damage for not attacking every turn is really powerful. It's difficult for your opponent because they feel like they have to just deploy things on the board just to absorb damage from the crest. So, and then obviously things like Unholy Vessel. My God, that card's just horrific in this deck, because not only does it clear the board, but then it essentially does 5 damage to your opponent's face as well. So yeah, phenomenal. Really, really powerful new archetype. One of the best to come out of set 3. Next up, we got Combo Roach. I have got Rika's version in here. They're very, very similar at this stage. I mean, you can run Lamaga instead of Olivia. You can, not have a 7-drop. But yeah, I'm just so impressed by Rika's gameplay with Combo Roach. Another one who I enjoy watching is Chappie. I think he's actually maybe gone top of the ladder just literally today or yesterday. Both really, really great forest players. And if you watch Chappie's channel, you'll see there's usually 2 or 3 cards that he kind of tweaks and changes. But the majority of this is pretty known by now, right? It's survive, accumulate pieces using your card draw, like the Godwood Staff and the Garden's Allure. And then you're able to put together a humongous combination by playing Roach, bouncing Roach back to hand with the staff, and then playing it out again. Sometimes for as much as 20 damage. Sometimes you don't quite need that amount. So yeah, very, very powerful. It is still the most difficult deck in the game to play. And I love that, by the way. I mean, I think having a tier 1 power deck that is also the hardest deck to play, I think that's a great deck design, great idea. Because most people will never be able to realize the power ceiling of it. And when you watch pro players play this, it's just a thing of beauty. It really is. Okay, next up we got Loot Sword. Now I am bringing you a version that got all the way to the final of the Shadowverse Open 2 qualifier. I think it's really, really powerful, this version, because it does all the things that Loot Sword does. Super powerful. You get the Sincero combo going off and doing 8 damage to face and board. But then you've got these kind of like one-offs that have got give you reach, like a Centaur Centurion. Of course, you've got... Of course, you're going to have Alberts, a Ravening Tentacles. And so what you do is you play the tablet in here to just clear everything down to one-ofs. And so you're more likely to actually then find those things and just top deck into your wins, essentially. This is a very powerful deck, guys. I think it's a great ladder deck, by the way. Super consistent. Your opponent really needs to know. It can be beaten, but your opponent really needs to know the matchup. And often on ladder, they just won't know, because they won't know exactly what you're playing. So I actually think Loot Sword's a great ladder deck, maybe the best deck for ladder, certainly one of very, very powerful deck right now. And last but not least, we've got Spell Boost Rune. This deck just doesn't go anywhere, does it? It's just always there, staring you in the face. I mean, look at this deck, guys. I mean, there aren't any cards here, right, from set 3 except for Gilnalease, I think. I think that's pretty much true. So it just shows you how powerful. This deck is probably the deck that's going to get nerfed in a few weeks. We're expecting our first ever Shadowverse Worlds Beyond Balance patch at the end of September. And I fully expect something to change about this deck, because the fact that it barely uses any new cards and it's still the top deck says a lot. That said, I do think this season is pretty good, because there are things that are now able to challenge this a little bit, but it's still the best end game there is, for sure. And that kind of mana cheat, that power cheat that the Decline gives you, there's just nothing like it in the game, quite frankly. Few subtle changes. There's no William in here. This version's gone for things like Snowman Army, making it pretty good in the mirror, and also double Edelweiss to kind of keep up with like a more sort of early game minions, early game followers, and a sort of tempo war, and giving you that free, that free evolution that it gets. Well, it costs you two Earthrights, obviously, but you know what I mean. So yeah, Spell Boost is just doing its thing, and it's still very powerful. You're seeing it on the tournament scene, and we're seeing it at the top of ladder. So that is, for the 13th of September, the Meta Snapshot, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know, like I say, in the comments. Please hit that thumbs up down below. Thanks for all the support, guys. And I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.